Good day, and thank you so much for joining us. In today's session, we'll be discussing delayed payments. We'll be giving you some tips from the book as to what do we do in instances where we are dealing with parked invoices, we are dealing with disagreements or back and forth when it's time to be doing the payment assessment, right? What we understand is that in terms of the NEC or the new engineering contract, whichever one you're working with, might be the term service, might be the engineering construction, might be the supply contract, or the professional services contract. They have a similar thing across all of them, which is the project manager or the service manager or the supply manager will provide or will conduct an assessment, right? An assessment just means that he will look into what work were you supposed to do in terms of the work's information and how far has that work gone, right? And then when it comes to the amount due, it will have to take into consideration the work that has been completed or submitted or delivered, right? And come to a value to say, this is what will be due at this month end, right? But now we understand that mostly value to say, this is what will be due at this month end, right? But now we understand that mostly we have disagreements as to the contractor might have a view to say he is entitled 5 million, for example, but the service manager or the project manager might also have a view which says no, from the 5 million actually only 3 is due, or actually only 4 is due, right? Hence, it's normally advisable to say, if it's work which has been done or a service which has been provided, the team, both the contractor and the employer's team that he has authorized to manage the contract on his behalf, must do a walk down to assess. Because if you do the assessment, you assess the work outstanding together, it eliminates the back and forth in emails, right? So the first thing would be do a planned walk together to assess and ascertain what work has been done to a point, right? And prove that, okay, I've submitted whatever test certificates that were required up to here. I've submitted all the timesheets according to my task order, which were required up to here, right? Now, I think from what I've submitted, this is due. But if there's still a disagreement, I'm just gonna read on the professional services contract. This is the guidance notes. I'm just gonna read subclause 51.3, right? Which says that where the employer is not in agreement with an invoice submitted by the consultant, he has to pay the amount he does not dispute and explain to the consultant why there is disagreement, right? So here's the thing, pay the amount you don't dispute, but then further explain to the consultant why is there a disagreement. Then it goes further to explain. The consultant then has to correct the invoice to the employer's assessment, right? Which means even in the scenario that we just spoke now, to say there's an invoice that is submitted for 5 million, but the project manager or the service manager in the term services contract will then say, my assessment only takes me to 4 million and not 5. Instead of parking the entire invoice, the service manager or the project manager must do an assessment on the 4 and certify the 4 and make payment on the 4, which means the consultant, or here, because it's a professional service, it says the consultant must correct the invoice to the employer's assessment, right? So on the consultant, there's also two loops now. One, the consultant, you must either provide, like correct your invoice from 5 to 4 so that it's aligning to the employer's assessment so that that portion can be paid, right? Then you have some cash flow to manage the business, and then, but you don't leave the one that's left behind. You come back to the one and provide whatever that the employer says are the reasons why this one cannot be paid, right? So you're just splitting the thing. You're just saying, okay, Mr. Employer or project manager, you are assessing it to 4. I need cash flow in my pocket. I'm going to correct the invoice to the 4. Submit that so that it gets processed for payment. Then we come back to the outstanding one. And then we say, okay, for this one, what is the disagreement? Here it says the employer must explain to the consultant why and where he disagrees, right? Now, he might disagree because you still need to provide further documentation. You still need to provide timesheets, maybe. You still need to provide proof that these costs are indeed incurred, right? You still need to provide or substantiate the one. But first, understand what is in agreement, deal with that so that it gets processed. Then let's come to the disagreement. Let's clarify, what are we disagreeing on and what do I need to do to correct the disagreement? If it's to say I did not provide proof that indeed this work is done, then provide that, then the one can also form part of that. I hope that part is clear. Because if from the project manager's team now, if we park the entire 5 and we don't find a split in there to say, Mr. Contractor or Mrs. Contractor, I agree with the 4, not the 5. Please revise your invoice to be in line with the 4 so I can make payment, right? Now it says, if he fails to make payment, he will be liable to pay interest to the consultant on any delayed payment. So this is now subclause 51.4. So in short, if we've received an invoice for 5, but we don't clarify to say from the 5, we only agree with the 4, as such, revise your invoice to be in line with the 4 so that we can proceed to pay the 4. On the 1, I still need your timesheets, I still need proof of this, I still need, right? If we don't do that, then it means we will end up being liable for interest on the entire 5. On this 1 million, we are in disagreement. Now let's start discussing, what do you need from me? What do I need from you? Let's get it. If we are both clear, then we certify it. It also goes in, right? What is interesting is that while the disagreement is being resolved, the employer should pay what he considers the proper amount in respect of services provided. If we look into the NEC 3, which is the engineering and construction contract, and then we look into subclause 50.4, right? I will just quote it now, which says, although assessment of the amount due are the responsibility of the project manager. This is now in terms of clause 50.1. He takes account of any submissions by the contractor and provides details of his assessment, right? So the responsibility to do the assessment of the amount due rests with the project manager, but he doesn't do it alone, right? He takes account of any submissions by the contractor and provides details of his assessment. And then it still says, however, the onus remains on the project manager to assess the amount due, even if he has not received a submission from the contractor. So what does this mean? This means that even if the contractor has not yet submitted anything to the project manager or to the service manager, the project manager can continue to do his own assessment of the amount due, right? Thank you for joining us. We will see you in the next video. Hope you've learned from us.